What you're looking at here is the best Gwyn build in Destiny Rising, and this is not from my opinion, this is based on the data. What I've done is taken a look at the top 10 Gwyn players in the server to find out what weapons they're using, what artifact builds they're using, and what other things they've done to their build. These top 10 players have ranked at the top of the leaderboard for the Expanse, which is a solo game mode based on how quickly you can clear content. There's waves of different enemies, and this is endgame content, so it's going to give us a really good idea of how strong these builds really are. Now, what's very interesting about all of these builds is they mostly follow a very similar pattern. We'll look at the artifacts later because there's a bit of differences there, but let's first start with the weapons. All of the 10 builds, besides one which I think got unlucky and didn't get an exotic yet, had the Concerto as their main weapon, the sidearm, and the shotgun was the Eternal Retribution. Now, there's some more information about this that we can talk about. Every single weapon had rolls with triple mythic traits. To get triple mythic traits, you're going to need to keep using mythic engrams until you get the Eternal Retribution. And each time you get it, you're going to get a random roll. I did it myself, and you can see on screen how I did this. I used all of my mythic fragments that I had farmed mostly from the casual events. I went to the Haven and created a bunch of this engram, and then I could choose to get Eternal Retribution. It took me literally 12 rolls before I got an Eternal Retribution with all of these traits. Now, there are only 6 different mythic traits for this shotgun, so there's mostly the same across the builds. It's hard to say if these top 10 players specifically went for certain traits or just kept rolling until they got a quadruple mythic roll. The number 1 player currently in the leaderboard had Disturbance alongside Conjugation. You grant increased damage to this weapon when it is equipped to a character of the same element. So that makes a lot of sense. The Eternal Retribution with Void works really well on Gwyn. And then interestingly, we didn't see this one across many other builds. This is the only one in the top 10 that had Eager Aspirant. This weapon gains increased damage when not firing, lasting up to 10 seconds. Upon firing, this damage bonus will gradually deplete until it reaches 0. Other popular traits that we saw across a lot of the other top 10 builds included Karmic Reward, Dual Loader, Line Formation, and Wound Counter. In fact, it was only the number 1 build that had Eager Aspirant, whereas all the others would roll into these other 4. Once again, maybe that's down to luck, I'm not sure. It was also very common to see all of these shotguns equipped with mythic or exotic mods, which is going to further enhance the power. Now, what was really interesting about the top 10 players is that a lot of them did have progress in their talent tree, but the number 1 player only had 3 rolls into their talent tree. They didn't complete it, and they still managed to get to the top of the leaderboard. So it goes to show that focusing on good artifacts and good weapon builds is going to go further than building out the full talent tree. That cannot be said for all players on this list though. For example, the top 2 player did indeed have the full talent tree. The top 3 player also had the full talent tree, well, up to number 5. So it was very clear that it did make quite a big significant difference, although there are other areas to improve your build on your own as well. So what about the artifacts then? Which artifacts were the most popular? Well, the number 1 player might surprise you. The first choice they chose was Resolute Conjunction. Take minus 28% damage from sources within 15 meters. So damage reduction. The second one, Ring of Conversion. 64% of overflow healing from the wielder's own abilities is converted to an overshield. The third choice, Inverted Fury. Gain plus 24% weapon damage bonus while shielded. And the fourth one, Bellicose Planetesimal. Casting signature abilities grants plus 24% weapon damage. Now, this was the number 1 build. However, across the top 10 players, it was very clear that a certain pattern started to realize. For the first slot, the number 1 pick was Resolute Conjunction, with 4 players out of the 10 picking this. This is the one that reduces damage from sources within 15 meters and was seen on the number 1 player's build. The second most popular choice was Abundant Planetesimal. Casting signature abilities restores health every 5 seconds, stacks 3 times. We also saw 2 people take Ring of Abundance, grants extra potency to healing and overshields received, and 1 player took Healing Radiation. Recover health per second while within 20 meters of a target affected by debuffs. Now, as we go through these artifacts, more of a similar pattern starts to reveal itself. The second slot for artifacts had 7 players taking Binging Planetesimal. Dealing damage with signature abilities restores health equal to 7% of the damage dealt, or however much you get the set effect for. That is a very clear winner in that category. If you're curious though, 2 other players took Ring of Conversion, which adds overflow healing from the wielder's own abilities into an overshield. And 1 player took Healing Conjunction. After taking damage within 15 meters of the source, recover health per second. Now, as we move on to the damage-based artifacts, this is where it becomes even clearer what kind of direction most players were taking their build. 8 out of the 10 players on the top leaderboard took Courageous Planetesimal. Casting any ability increases damage dealt by 6% for 10 seconds. 1 player also took Inverted Fury. You gain weapon damage bonus while shielded. And 1 player took Jolted Transit. The drawn weapon deals less precision damage and more body shot damage. And finally, when it comes to the 4th slot, 7 players took Rampaging Planetesimal. Dealing damage to targets within a 15-meter radius grants signature ability damage bonus for 10 seconds. 2 players took Bellicose Planetesimal. Casting signature abilities grants 10% weapon damage for 6 seconds. And 1 player took Resonating Transit. When both equipped weapons are the same element, they deal extra elemental damage to matching shields. Now, whether you want to go for the number 1 player's build or the most popular across 10 players is up to you. But if we look at the numbers, it's really easy to see the most popular build here. The most popular build across these 10 players ended up being Resolute Conjunction on 1st slot, Binging Planetesimal on 2nd slot, Courageous Planetesimal on 3rd slot, and Rampaging Planetesimal on 4th slot. So if you want to build the data-driven best build for Gwyn, these are the artifacts to go for. You may also want to swap out Resolute Conjunction with Abundant Planetesimal. We did see that a lot in slot 1 as well. Firstly, that came down to re-rolling a bunch of the mythics, right? To get full mythic trait rolls, that really helps improve the power rating. They also spent a lot of time getting exotic and mythic mods. The actual artifacts varied. We saw the top player only having mythic artifacts. Now, I'm sure as time goes on, he'll build into exotic. As the time of speaking, it was only mythic. There are a few other players across the top 10 that did also have exotics, with some cases of players having a full stack of 4 exotics. So going for exotics is definitely a good idea, but filling it with fully upgraded mythics to begin with isn't a bad shout either. Another really important factor is the attribute scores. Most of these players pretty much fully max these things out, and I'll explain what I mean. You can see the rating here. It can max out to 55 on the first number here, and most of these are like close to 55, right? And that's going to make a massive difference to the extra stats that your character has. For example, the number 1 player had Void Boost, Ability Strength, Signature Boost, Super Boost, and then some Elemental Resistance, Defense Boost, and other defense-based stats there. Now, if you didn't know, when you get an artifact in this game, it will have a random roll to begin with from 35 to 55. And you're going to want to try and max it out as much as possible. And to do that, you have to come to the artifact refactor and basically just keep refactoring it until it gets lucky enough to have high base stats. And this requires a lot of resources. Luckily, you can break down all of your unused artifacts into these resources, well, besides the artifactual essence, to constantly keep upgrading it. For example, right now I've got 40, 43, 51, and 51 on this. If I refactor it, it's going to random roll, and I can keep doing it until we get better stats overall. Might take a little bit of a while. And if you hit the full ring here of 6 attempts, you get luck, and that means you're guaranteed better stats. So this is what a lot of these players did, is not only did they get mythic and exotic artifacts, but they refactored them to have the highest base stats possible, and that really helped improve their build. It should come as no surprise that most of the people on this list also made sure that the attribute rolls made sense for Gwyn. So especially on these last 2, we saw Super Boost, Ability Strength, Signature Boost a lot, and Void Boost. You know, these were the main rolls. If you end up getting attributes that have something like Solar Boost on it, then it's not going to be so useful for Gwyn. So it's very clear that these builds specifically aim for extra boosts for Gwyn's actual stats. void and signature boost and ability strength for the most part. Now, you may be wondering, okay, so that's the top players in the Expanse, right? That's only one area of content. And you are right, there may be some differences in builds across other areas of gameplay. So we can take a look at that right now. The trouble is with other content is it does focus on full team builds and not just solo builds. So it's not necessarily going to only be, you know, a specific set of players' efforts, but the whole team. However, the fastest run for the raid in the server, or my server at least, is a team of 5 Gwyns and 1 Tantu. So we can actually take a look at this. Let's first start with this character here. Here's a first look at one of the characters. Some people keep their privacy on so you can't see their stats, unfortunately. As expected, they're using the Concerto and the Eternal Retribution. Let's see what artifacts they've gone for. Healing Radiation, Binging Planetesimal, Courageous Planetesimal, and Rampaging Planetesimal. So that's pretty standard besides the first choice. We have a look at another player in this squad. Their Gwyn has the same weapons, and for the artifacts, Resolute Conjunction on the first, followed by Binging, Courageous, and Rampaging. So these are the most popular choices by far, with the first one being a little bit dependent on, I guess, what kind of content the player is doing. But for the most part, those are the artifacts across all areas of gameplay. So hopefully now you know how to build Gwyn to the best possible standard. This is what the best players in the world are building. And if you build it like that, it's sure to go a long way in Destiny Rising. Thanks for watching. If you found this useful, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you all in the comments. Cheerio!